Good evening, Kenton community. My name is Sabatino Sumato. I am your superintendent, and this is your weekly connection. So this week for the weekly connection, it will be a little bit shorter than other weeks, but there are four major areas that I want to summarize and give some more detail on. First, I just want to sum up our parent question and answer session from yesterday. Next, I want to talk about the attestation piece, and the attestation is what students and staff complete before coming into a school building. After that, I just want to give a little summary on the progress on athletics since last week and our announcements last week. And then finally, I want to round it off this week with talking about a new Community Connection Award that we're going to be doing here in Kenton. So first, let's start off with our summary from last evening. So folks, more than 300 people joined us for our fifth parent question and answer session yesterday via YouTube Live. You can always watch the replay of this video and live chat. They're available for all of our parents and our community members under the reopening tab on the website. We answered many questions about our plans and what's going to be happening now as we're beginning to transition from a fully remote environment and start bringing students back, small incremental phases, into a hybrid environment. And ladies and gentlemen, just to reiterate, we've announced this week that for our youngest students, our K through 4 students, if those people that had originally said that they want to be in virtual through January, these people told us, these families told us in August that they wanted to be virtual through January. That was before we knew we were going to be in a full remote model, but they indicated that no matter what, they wanted to be in a virtual learning academy. We asked for those families, if they do not want to remain in that virtual learning academy, to let us know this week, by the end of this week, because some of the things that we're going to be doing, most likely they're going to be with a new teacher while they remain virtual. Now, the good news is that when they do come back to school, whenever that may be, they will go back into their original class that they started the year with. We're holding their spots in those classrooms. A lot of people ask, well, Sumato, then why the change? Because our intention was to, we were working with our teachers and our staff to really find ways to either open the camera or display some lessons on the video. And what we find in the research that we've done, the learning that we've taken away from this, is that the models that we're coming up with and that we're designing collaboratively with all of our staff, they'll really work for 5th through 12th graders, ladies and gentlemen. But it is not the best instruction of what we can offer for our earliest learners, our youngest learners. And that's why instructionally, we're looking to put a designated teacher that's only focused on those virtual learners at home for those two subjects of ELA and mathematics. There's special areas, it's looking like those are going to stay with the same teachers. You know, there may be some scheduling shifting that we have to do, but we're looking to be able to provide the best instructional model that we can. Remember our two priorities. We're always safety, number one. The second priority is delivering the best instruction that we possibly can. And this is for the change. So more information will be coming out next week as we continue to design this. Remember, this is for the October 13, so that we're ready for that. And that first phase of coming back to hybrid. So additionally, ladies and gentlemen, last night we talked about some other topics. A lot was focused on instruction. I talked about the elementary piece. The secondary piece, we rolled out some preliminary designs that secondary instruction will be shared even more next week with our community, and some of the things to expect coming back into that hybrid. I want to reiterate, and I said this last night, what we have in front of us is a template for re-entering. Those are those dates that you see. We have phases. We know that, for example, how we're going to use those phases. A perfect example is we're having an orientation coming up for some of our youngest students before they come back in on the 13th, so that they can get used to their procedures, their school, functioning in COVID in a school. So we know that that's why some of those dates and times are there. But I also want to leave this part of the conversation with this. Remember, if we could continue progressing at a good rate, safety being the priority, there's nothing that says that we can't or that we won't speed up the reentry process. So I just want to be clear. We're going to do what makes the most sense as we continue to progress during this. Parents, I know there's some parents very angry with me for this change in the elementary with the teaching staff and the potential change. Folks, I promise you, if I could Monday morning quarterback myself, there would always be times that I would go back, hit the rewind button, and maybe do some things differently. But as we go through and we learn more, I'm always going to look at everything that we have coming in, advice and feedback from our community, advice and feedback from our staff, our boots on the ground, of what is the best for kids and learning. So sometimes I have to monitor and adjust, and I will always be apologetic for that, but I also will never lie about that. I wish that maybe we would have done things a little bit differently in August to set ourselves up better for this. But as we come through and we learn, this is some of the learning taken away, and I want to make sure that it moves forward in the best possible. And that's how the whole year is going to be. Always keep in mind, too, our eventual goal is to get back to 100% instruction, in-person instruction, I should say. That may offend people or rub some people the wrong way, but folks, there is no better learning than a student in person with our amazing Kenton staff. So we can't lose focus on that. We will always keep safety first. We realize we're still in the pandemic, but that has got to be a priority, that when we can and when it's safe, that's the way that we're going to proceed. We also spoke a little bit last night about athletics. So just to give you an update with athletics, teams began tryouts and practices this week. All sports are following very strict, specific return to play protocols. Athletes will be screened daily, masks will be worn at all times, and no locker rooms will be utilized. Spectators, now folks, please, this is that partnership. I really need your help here. During this time, athletes will get passes. They'll get 2 passes apiece, and they'll only be allowed to have 2 spectators. Spectators cannot come to the event if they don't have one of those passes. So I said this last week. We said it again yesterday. I'm continuing to front load you on this. This is not to be offensive to families. We get it. We know how tough all of this is. But we have to follow strict guidelines. It is the only way that I could approve for us to come back to athletics. So please help with that. And please understand, hopefully sooner rather than later, we will be back to a more normal type of procedure. Our kids need it. So once again, 2 spectators. Athletes will be provided passes, and they will be checked in as they enter the parking lots. So we're going to have a very stringent protocol with that. Please work with our athletes, your students, your children, our students, that they really need to follow these protocols. We cannot find a time that we start becoming lax with what we're holding ourselves accountable for. It is the only way that we can proceed with this, and it's extremely important that we do proceed following those protocols. So that really summed up the meeting from last night. Now, in continuing to come back to school, we will have attestations. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, that's that partnership that I've spoken to the community about since August. And that's what we're going to be asking parents to make sure, families, guardians, to make sure that they're with their child attesting to the fact that they don't have any of these conditions prior to entering the buildings. We can't play around with this. The safety of everyone involved will always be dependent on everyone coming into that building. Now, what I mean by that, the attestation, so the families and students that are coming back on October 13th will be the first group, and this will be an electronic attestation that we're going to be rolling out. So I'm kind of front loading you for this so that we can get used to it as a community. And there'll be questions and things that you attest to. For example, you're not exhibiting any symptoms or you haven't had a fever. You haven't tested positive for COVID-19. The contacts with somebody who has tested COVID-19 positive for COVID-19, you could say no to your knowledge that you have not. You haven't traveled to one of the at-risk areas as defined by our New York State governor. These are things that you'll find on that attestation, and we need, once again, that partnership. We need you to make sure that you're monitoring this every morning before you ever come to one of our buildings. Folks, if somebody is not feeling well, keep them home. Please keep them home. That has got to be the goal. Now, I know, and when I say the goal for safety, that safety before entering the building is the number one priority. And finally, we want to give you an update this evening about our Community Connection Award. So I'm really, really thoroughly impressed with how well Kenton just comes together as a community. Folks, this is not and will continue to not be an easy time. I told you last week, it just stinks. It stinks. And the way that everybody comes together to really embrace and wrap around each other is so impressive here in Kenton. So a way that we're going to continue to recognize this, and there's always recognitions in Kenton, but this is a new one. We're going to be doing a Community Connection Award, and that's monthly at board meetings. It's going to be for any member of the Kenton School District community who has furthered or contributed to the betterment of the district and our schools, our students, and our staff. Now, here's the key. It's going to be a nomination through our website. So the great thing about this is that we really wanted to open it up to the community so the community can nominate other members of the community. So nominations will be collected and submitted, or accepted, I should say, quarterly. So we're going to ask you, we'll keep the nominations open for a duration of time. These first nominations will be open through October. So October 30th, okay? And those nominations will be inclusive of, we're going to recognize a person during the months of November, December, and January at our board meetings. So we'll do these nominations quarterly. We'll have the window open. You nominate, you follow the directions on the form. It's not a real in-depth form, but to collect some information, okay, and then we will recognize people. We'll recognize students, staff, through our board recognitions and in the weekly connection. And that will be, in other words, this is this award, the Community Connection Award, is going to be solidified to only those in our community. Our students and our staff, we're going to continue to recognize in other ways at board meetings and in other, through the weekly connection. That'll be a new piece coming up in a couple weeks. But you'll see that this community connection really we want to dedicate to the Kenton community. So please look for that nomination on our website, www.ktufsd.org/nominate. And help us to recognize those in the community that really continue to do great work. In closing, ladies and gentlemen, this has been a very great week, a very long week, a very challenging week. There is nothing easy about any of our weeks during COVID. I want to thank you once again for all your work you're doing with all of your kiddos. I want to thank our staff. Folks, the Kenton staff is unbelievable. All of our staff, our principals, our teachers, and our support staff, really. So once again, that pat on the back, we hope to exemplify that for you. That's the type of culture that we're always going for in Kenton. It's not always going to be easy. There's going to be things that you disagree with. There's going to be things that you really don't like decisions made. But we got to keep everything positive and moving in the right direction, always for our kids. Always for our kids. So you'll always have my apologies if anything does change, like the change that we've seen this week. And please understand, none of this is easy. With that being said, we do appreciate everybody. We're most appreciative of our community and how we come together, because only together will we be Kenton proud, Kenton strong, and together helping each other move Kenton forward. Thank you very much. Keep your family close and have a wonderful weekend.